In the village of Dufia, nestled along the winding river that cut through the dense jungle, there lived a man named Tunde. He was known throughout the village for his wisdom and skills as a healer. He had inherited the title of healer from his father, and like his ancestors, he had mastered the ancient arts of herbal medicine, spiritual rituals, and natural remedies. His hands, though weathered and calloused from years of work, were trusted by everyone in the village to heal wounds, fevers, and broken hearts. Tunde's son Olumide was a bright boy just turning 12. He was full of energy, and the village elders often joked that Olumide had inherited his father's sharp mind, but lacked the patience to learn the old ways. While Tunde would sit for hours with his father's old books, studying the plants and their uses, Olumide preferred to run through the forest with his friends, throwing stones into the river or playing football with the other boys. But there was one thing that set Olumide apart. His father's dream was for him to become a healer too. For generations, the healer's son had followed in the footsteps of his father. It was a sacred tradition, one that was passed down from father to son, and Tunde had always imagined that his boy, Olumide, would be the next in line. He believed it was his duty to teach his son the art of healing, even though Olumide didn't seem to have much interest. It was early one morning when the trouble began. The village had been struck by a strange illness, a fever that made the body burn with heat and caused the victim's skin to become pale and cold. At first, it seemed to be just a few cases, but by the end of the week, half the village had fallen ill, including Tunde's wife Adama Tunde, as the village healer, worked tirelessly, mixing herbs and chanting ancient prayers to try and ease the symptoms. He kept vigil by his wife's side, his brow furrowed with concern. Olumide, however, stayed in his room, uninterested in the situation. He had always been afraid of illness, and the sight of his mother's weak and trembling body made him want to run far away. "Olumide," Tunde called to him one evening. "Come, it is time you learn how to help your mother. You will need to mix the herbs and prepare the poultice. This is part of your training." Olumide was hesitant. He didn't want to deal with the sick, especially not his own mother. He wanted to be outside, playing, laughing, and enjoying his youth. "Father, I don't know how," he protested. "I've never done it before." Tunde's face softened, but there was a firmness in his voice. "You have been watching me for many years now. I have taught you how to recognize the plants and the remedies. Now is the time to help." With a sigh, Olumide stood up, following his father to the small hut where the herbs were stored. He watched as his father carefully crushed the leaves, mixed them with water, and applied them to his mother's chest. Tunde's hands moved with the grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. "And now you try," Tunde said, handing Olumide a small mortar and pestle. Olumide hesitated, then reluctantly crushed the herbs under his father's watchful eye. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The herbs didn't seem as difficult to prepare as he had imagined. In fact, he felt a strange sense of connection to the plants, as if they were teaching him their secrets. He continued working, and by the time the sun set, he had prepared a mixture that seemed to soothe his mother's fever. "Good," Tunde said, his face breaking into a smile. "You are learning." Over the next few days, as more villagers became ill, Olumide worked alongside his father, preparing medicines and helping to care for the sick. With each passing day, he became more confident in his ability, but something else was happening. He began to feel the weight of his father's expectations on his shoulders. Every time he looked into Tunde's eyes, he saw the hope there. The hope that Olumide would follow in his footsteps, become the next healer, and carry on the family legacy. Olumide was torn. Part of him wanted to continue playing, to run through the forest and explore the world beyond the village. But another part of him, a part he didn't fully understand, felt drawn to his father's work. There was something sacred about it. The way his father could bring comfort to the sick, the way he was revered by the villagers. One evening, as the village gathered around the fire to celebrate the end of the illness, Olumide's mind was filled with thoughts. He looked at his father, who was sitting proudly among the elders, his face a mask of serenity. Olumide couldn't deny the pride he felt for him, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that he was being forced into something he wasn't ready for. Later that night, Olumide went to his father's hut. "Father," he said, his voice uncertain. Do I have to be a healer like you? Tunde looked at his son, his eyes softening. Olumide, you are not being forced into anything. You are free to choose your own path. But remember, this family has always been healers. It is in your blood. And if you decide to walk this path, you will never walk it alone. Olumide thought for a moment. I'm scared, he admitted. I don't know if I can live up to what you want. Tunde smiled gently. It is not about living up to anyone's expectations, my son. It is about finding your own strength. If the healer's path is yours, you will know it. But if it is not, then we will find another way. Weeks passed, and the village slowly returned to normal. Olumide continued his studies with his father, but with a new understanding. He wasn't being forced into a role. Instead, he was learning, finding his own rhythm, and deciding for himself whether he wanted to take on the mantle of healer. One day, while sitting by the river, Olumide had a realization. He loved the forest, he loved the animals, and he loved helping his village. But he also realized that being a healer was more than just preparing medicines. It was about caring for the people, listening to their stories, and offering comfort in times of need. Maybe, he thought, he wasn't afraid of following in his father's footsteps after all. Maybe he could blend his love for nature with his father's teachings and create his own unique path. When he returned home that day, he found his father sitting by the fire, reading his old books. Olumide sat down beside him. Father, he said quietly, I think I want to try. Tunde looked at his son, his eyes filled with both pride and understanding. It is your path, Olumide, he said, and I will walk it with you.